A rattle of drums at 4 a.m. on July 1st, 1777, roused the British encampment at Crown Point on the western lip of Lake Champlain. Soldiers stumbled from their tents, shrugged on their uniform coats, and gobbled down a cold breakfast with the indifference of men who expected no better. For the past fortnight, the invasion force of 8,000 troops had sailed and rowed south for 100 miles, from the Richelieu River in Quebec to within 15 miles of the American stronghold at Fort Ticonderoga. Through mischance and rebel defiance, many of these same redcoats had failed to capture the fortress 8 months earlier, despite standing at the gates. Now the prize again lay within grasp, and this time they intended to win through. "We are to contend for the King and the Constitution of Great Britain, to vindicate law and to relieve the oppressed," orders issued the previous evening proclaimed. "This army must not retreat." By 5 a.m. the sun had crested the great shoulders of the Green Mountains to the east, gilding the craggy Adirondacks in the west. Platoon after platoon scuffed down to the shoreline to clamber aboard gunboats, longboats, and six-oared, flat-bottomed bateaus. Shouted orders carried across the lake, along with the creak of capstans and oarlocks. Soon the first vessels pulled away from the anchorage to assemble mid-lake in battle formation. Army musicians caught the moment and struck up martial airs. The music and drums of the different regiments were continually playing, a Royal Artillery lieutenant wrote, and contributed to make the scene and passage extremely pleasant. More than 100 birch-bark canoes led the flotilla. Each carried 20 to 30 warriors, mostly Iroquois, sporting nose rings, slitted earlobes, and feathers in tufted topknots, their eyelids and cheeks daubed with vermilion paint. Some wore knife sheaths made from lynx skins, and a British officer recorded an arse-clout, or covering for the privities. Arrayed across the mile-wide lake behind the Indian vanguard came the main battle force, the most complete and splendid regatta you can possibly conceive, a witness reported. The three-masted frigate Royal George, built by shipwrights in Canada during the winter and carrying 26 guns, and smaller vessels named Inflexible, Carleton, Maria, and Royal Convert, as well as 44 gunboats, 23 longboats, 26 cutters, 260 bateaus, and a wallowing 91-foot radeau, or raft, the Thunderer, ferrying barreled gunpowder and heavy cannons intended to blast Ticonderoga's walls to rubble. A brig, a gondola, and a sloop, Washington, Jersey, and Lee, had been captured in October from the rebel general turned Commodore Benedict Arnold, whose gallant, forlorn rearguard fight in these very waters had helped delay the earlier British attack until winter forced the invaders back to Canada. All told, this squadron carried 133 naval guns to complement the Army's 130 field cannons, mortars, and howitzers, each barrel stamped with the King's monogram or other symbols of possession. Storeships and lake transports continued to arrive at Crown Point from the north, laden with almost 5,000 tons of salt pork, hard biscuits, and other rations, along with siege tools, ammunition, rum, cattle, and civilian camp followers, whose numbers officially included 225 women and 500 children, although some hyperbolists would claim that the combined figure actually approached 2,000. "It looked," wrote Corporal Roger Lamb of the 9th Regiment of Foot, "like some stupendous fairy scene of a dream." By late afternoon, many troops had disembarked on either shore to join the advance regiments moving toward Ticonderoga, now just a few miles ahead. Bullfrogs croaked in the shallows, and white elderberry blossoms brightened the conifer thickets, the birthplace of every biting insect, one miserable chaplain wrote. Some men smeared cedar sap on their faces in a vain effort to repel mosquitoes and deer flies.